Hello, this is Hwansan Sunim, and welcome to our program. Recently, I had what was for me a slightly alarming experience in meeting with the university students that I meet in Seoul on a weekly basis. What happened was at our weekly gathering, one of the students mentioned that he couldn't fall asleep at night. And so immediately, like all of the other students started suggesting different kinds of sleep medicines and sleeping pills. And what became clear in the next few minutes was that these young students in college knew as much about sleeping pills as like your average pharmacy owner. So, so I asked them, what's going on here? Are all of you having trouble going to sleep? And, they just kind of laughed like I was asking something so obvious. And they said, yeah, we can't fall asleep. So I asked them, well, why? You're in college. This is a good time in life. And so we started talking about that. And what became evident was that at night, they just had too many thoughts. They were just too restless. They couldn't stay still. Their minds were going too fast. So for today's episode, I would like to think about how sun meditation can help us to deal with late night restlessness. So the topic for today's episode is how to use sun meditation to overcome late night restlessness and get a good night's sleep. Now in this regard, I would like to share my own experience with this problem. Now the first thing that you should know is that originally when I was young, I had no problem going to sleep. I'm one of those people that if I just decide I want to go to sleep, I can fall asleep. And after I became a monk in the monastery, really my problem was trying not to fall asleep, because in the monastery our sleep hours are very restricted. So for many years, falling asleep was never really a problem for me. But then about 5 years ago, my teacher, Sun Master Songdam, asked me to share the teachings of sun meditation with the public, with Koreans, especially young Koreans, and also international people. Now, the thing that I would like you to understand is that because of the unusual circumstances, my unusual background, the fact that I was born in the United States and then became a monk in Korea, almost since the first day that I became a monk, there have always been people in the media who have wanted to interview me or, do an article about me or something like that. So now I was very well aware that my teacher, Sun Master Songdam, really wanted us to live, disconnected from society, to just focus on our meditation and not go public, basically. So in those early years, really throughout my life as a monk, every time I was asked for an interview or asked to speak in public, I would always refuse. And I was actually, to be honest, I was rather proud that I was refusing, because I really felt that I was living up to my teacher's teachings. So when he came to me 5 years ago and told me to start teaching, this was quite a shock to me. I felt like he was giving up on me as a meditator. I felt like he was saying to me, well, you're not going to make it, so you should do something good for people and teach instead of, actually practicing meditation. I mean, he didn't really mean it, and he certainly didn't say that. That was not his intention, but that's how I took it. So I was very troubled by this, but at the same time, I very much wanted to uphold his instructions to me, and so it was with a very divided heart that I began to teach publicly. And what I found over time, as I became more active teaching outside, and as I began this show, was that I began to have problems sleeping. So inside I was troubled by the implications of my teacher telling me to go public and speak in front of people. And also there was this new thing that I had to do and all these new skills I had to learn. And I was just meeting so many different people. So what I found was that if I worked during the day, even though I was very tired, at night, I couldn't fall asleep. My mind would be filled with racing thoughts. I would be worried about the next thing that we had to do, the next project, the next time I had to speak in front of people. It was very much like, I think, the mind state of someone who works in a company. And there's a kind of a funny saying in the United States. They say that when you buy a new product, like a new device, the saying goes, when in doubt, when all else fails, read the instructions. And that's kind of a joke because most people just try to use something without really reading the instructions. In the same way, when all else failed, I finally decided I should actually try to do exactly what my teacher, Sun Master Songdam, is telling us to do in his Dharma speeches. You know, I should be trying to do imoko at every single moment of the day. At every time I meet people, every time I'm in a car having to go somewhere, every time we're planning something, I should just do it as much as possible. And I also started increasing my sitting time, the time that I spent in seated meditation. And what I found was that it was that combination of having regular seated meditation combined with an ongoing, deliberate, moment-by-moment effort to do imoko and remain in a state of meditation. This ultimately solved my restlessness problem. So I share this story with you because I really want you to know, I'm speaking from experience. This really does work. So bearing that in mind, let's take this time now to enter into meditation and listen to the Dharma speech of my teacher, Sun Master Songdam, as he explains to us how to find inner peace in the midst of a busy life.
이 개수는 고의의 개수인데 지난 석 달 동안 선원에서 정진을 하고 그리고 해제 법요식에 참석한 도반들의 여러 도반들 가슴속이 과연 이와 같을 것이다. 황벽 선사가 전신법요라고 하는 법문 가운데 말씀하시기를 어떻게 해야 계급에 떨어지지 않겠습니까? 계급이라 하는 것은 일체 차별이요, 분별이요, 시비요, 중생이 살아가는데 눈을 통해서, 귀를 통해서, 육근, 육식, 육진을 통해서 무엇을 받아들이면 거기에 집착하고 거기에서 분별심을 내. 그런 것들이 쌓이고 쌓여서 우리는 끝없는 생사윤회를 하게 되는데, 그러한 차별과 계급에 떨어지지 않는 법은 어떤 할인이 무엇입니다. 황벽 스님이 말씀하시기를 종일 밥을 먹되 한 토루 쌀도 씹은 바가 없어. 종일 걸어가되 한 조각의 땅도 밟음이 없어요. 이와 같이 할 때에 인상도 아상도 중생상도 수지상도 없는다. 종일 분리일체상 종일토록 일체의 일에 여의지 않되 모든 경계에 현역되지도 않느니라. 이렇게 공부해 나가는 것이, 이렇게 살아가는 것이 그것을 일러서 자제하는 사람이라고 하는 것이다. 다시 시시염염 일초일초 생각이 일체상을 본 바가 없다. 그래야 과거, 현재, 미래 삼세에 집착이 없는 것이다. 과거는 이미 간 바가 없고 현재에도 머무른 바가 없고 미래에도 올 것이 없어. 그래서 과거니 현재니 미래니 그런데 마음에 집착이 없으니 아니 판교하여 편안히 단정히 앉아서 이문불 모든 눈앞에 지나가는 전개되는 그런 일에 내가 집착한 바가 없고 거기에 신경을 쓰지 아니하니까 그냥 그대로 맡겨두라. 그것이 이문불. 일체 흥망성쇠와 생로병사와 희로애락의 경계가 우리 주변에 끊임없이 일어난다 하더라도 거기에 내가 동요가 안 되고 집착한 바가 없으니 이것을 일러서 해탈이라고 하느니라. 어떻게 하면은 그러한 경지에까지 들어가야 하느냐. 그래서 그런 자제한 경계, 그런 해탈의 경계에 들어가기 위해서는 활구 참선밖에 더 있느냐. 이 활구 참선이라는 것은 견무, 일체 견문각지의 경계에서 보고, 듣고, 감각하고, 무엇을 알고 하는 그것을 거기에 집착해서도 안 되지만 그것을 버리고 떠나서 하려고도 안 돼요. 초학자는 경계가 시끄러우니까 조용한 데를 찾으려고 그러고 무엇이 일어나면 그것을 피하려고 그러고 그러는데 거기에 집착하지도 말고 그것을 여의려고 하지도 말고 견문각지의 경계에서 동념할 것도 없고 그래서 이 공부는 견문갑질을 여의고 찾으려고 하지도 말고 견문갑질을 버리고 따로 어떤 법을 피우려고 하지도 말고 이것은 부적불려 직하지도 않고 여의려고 하지도 않고 여의라고 하는 것은 그것을 부정하는 것이다. 주어지도 말고 집착하지도 말면 효행자제해야 한다. 초학자는 대단히 그런 경지에 들어가기가 어려울 것이나 일체 경계 행주좌와 어묵동경 간에 어떤 경계가 일어나요? 내 마음에 드는 경계가 일어나거나 내 마음에 거슬리는 경계가 일어나거나 바로 그것에 즉해서 자기의 본참 화두를 거각을 해야 한다.
So in his Dharma speech, Sun Master Songdam tells us that we can achieve a state of inner peace where, according to him, inside of our heart, it is as clear and clean as if it's just after a rainstorm. How can we find this inner peace? Now, one of the things that I notice in my own experience of struggling with restlessness and sleeplessness, and also listening to my students, is that in the course of a day, when you're doing a lot of different kinds of work and meeting with a lot of different kinds of people and trying to follow deadlines and responding to different kinds of pressures, is that when you come home, when you go back to wherever it is that you live, even though your body is very tired, because you've been stimulated so much, your mind is very awake, and it's very restless. The other thing that we also need to understand is that, as I mentioned, when my teacher first told me to share his teachings with the world, I had divided feelings about it. On the one hand, I thought it was a good thing to do, and on the other hand, I thought, well, maybe this is a sign of his disappointment, or maybe it's a sign of failure on my part or something. So I had these kind of conflicted, divided feelings. And I think that most people who work at their jobs feel that way. Very many people feel, on the one hand, oh yes, I did a good job, I worked hard today. On the other hand, they think, am I doing the right thing? You know, is this leading me where I want to go? So there is this deep inner conflict, and then all this stimulation that's going on during the day, and so at night, your mind runs wild. So in this regard, what I found personally helpful was we need to learn how to know the difference between planning and worrying. So, but nonetheless, we do have to make plans. Even very simple things like, I will brush my teeth before I eat breakfast. I will pick up the laundry on the way home. These are plans. It's very hard to live without making at least the very simplest kind of plan. But when does planning become over-planning and worrying? And that's something that we need to learn how to distinguish. Normally, if you're calm and centered, what you normally do is you plan, then you execute, then you plan, then you execute, you plan, you execute, and you keep adjusting your plan as you go. Because you know that no matter how good a plan you make, it never really goes perfectly according to plan. It always turns out a little bit different. So then you respond, you make another plan, you execute, and you keep adjusting. Over-planning happens when you try in advance to think of every possible thing that could go wrong. So in your mind, you're thinking, well, if this happens, then I'll do this, and if that happens, I'll do that, and if someone says something, then I'll say this, and if this happens out of the blue, then I'll do this. And you're just constantly making plans, and it doesn't feel like you're worrying. It feels different than what people think of worrying, because people usually think of worrying as just thinking of the worst possible outcome and then getting upset about it. But over-planning, I think, is also a form of worrying. And the thing about over-planning is it's based on a wrong assumption. It's based on this assumption that if I'm just smart enough, I can figure out everything that can possibly happen in advance and make a plan to deal with every single possibility. That's not how life works. Life is always new. As Sun Master Songdam says in his Dharma speech, you know, things are always rising and declining, appearing and disappearing, being created and being destroyed. Things are constantly being renewed, and we have to adjust to them as they occur. But this is all very easy to say. You can even be aware that you're over-planning and worrying and being too restless. It still doesn't help. So what we need to do, as Sun Master Songdam says, is we need to apply living phrase sun meditation in our lives at the physical level, and we need to do it at a very precise, committed, detailed level. This means that when we sit, we've really got to try to sit. Trying to sit means we really have to learn how to relax our body. We really have to learn how to go deep into the abdominal breathing. And when we focus on imoko, we have to focus calmly, with balance, you know, with confidence and with a sense of ease. You can't meditate with all this tension in yourself, because otherwise it won't work. So this is the first thing that we need to learn how to do, is use the meditation to stop planning. When you feel yourself planning, when you feel yourself thinking, and you have to be very, very patient to do this. You can't think, oh, I'll do imoko and that will solve everything. That's not how it works. You have to be willing to be patiently come back to imoko, keep coming back and really work with the abdominal breathing to relax your body, become very sensitive to your body, become very sensitive to your emotions. So as soon as you feel yourself becoming tense or excited, you become aware of that and you bring yourself back down again. And it's just this way of soothing yourself and consoling yourself over and over and over again. And what we're trying to do here is we are trying to go into a state of non-resistance, of total acceptance. As was mentioned in the Dharma speech, that no matter what happens, whether it's good or bad, whether we like it or dislike it, we just stay calm and cool and detached inside. Now, a lot of people talk about the importance of total acceptance. And they talk about acceptance as if it's something that you willfully do, that you intentionally do. But I don't think that's exactly true. I think that we are normally in a state of acceptance. When we go out in the street and we look at the sky, we don't say, oh, I wish the sky was red instead of blue. We don't resist most of the things that we encounter in day-to-day life. But every once in a while, we do start resisting. We do start thinking, I wish this wasn't so. I wish things were different. That is a state of resistance. That is a state of attachment. And once we do that, we are in an argument with reality. We are trying to fight against reality, and this is going to cause a great deal of stress and suffering for ourselves. I wish I had total control of my life. I wish I could make a perfect plan that will account for all possible contingencies. This wishing, this attachment, puts us into a state of extreme tension and anxiety, which will make it impossible for us to rest and relax. So what we need to learn how to do is recognize when we're in a state of resistance and patiently use sun meditation to let go of that resistance. Remember, once again, non-resistance and acceptance are our natural state, but once in a while, we just very unreasonably want things to be different. And I'll give you a simple example of that from my own life. Some time ago, it was the middle of summer, it was very, very hot, and I was on my way back to this office that I work in at my temple. And I was very much looking forward to getting into that office because it has air conditioning, and it was extremely hot. So on the way home, on the way back to my temple, I didn't mind the heat. I was okay with it, even though I was sweating, even though I was very aware of it and I was kind of uncomfortable. I wasn't upset about it. There was no emotional response to it. But then I went into the office and I found that the air conditioner was broken. And then I realized that everything just became so uncomfortable because I so wanted to be able to turn on the air conditioner and cool the room down. And I even could recognize I'm in a state of resistance. I am being unable to accept that this air conditioner is not doing what I want it to do. But nonetheless, it took me a long time. It took me quite a while to use Imoko and the breathing and sun meditation to finally let go, because I had been wishing for it and anticipating for it for such a long time. The reason why I tell this story is because when we do get attached to something, people say, oh, don't get attached to that. But the truth is, it's not conscious. It's an unconscious reaction. It's almost like a muscle spasm where your muscle tightens up and you can't open your fingers. You have no control. You feel like you have no control. Under those circumstances, it's important for us to accept that this may take some time to let go and patiently use the sun meditation to calm down and relax and give it as much time as it needs. And the more we practice this, the faster and faster we learn to let go of our resistance, let go of our attachment, and enter into our natural state of total acceptance. And when we can do that, when we can enter into a natural state of total acceptance, we can go even deeper. We can go into a state of emptiness, of emptying our mind, a state where the meditation becomes very calm and natural, so that that focusing on Imoko becomes very natural, and it's almost like all the other thoughts and emotions and activity in our mind disappear, and we become empty. Okay. Now, what I'm talking about now is not the same thing as what Sun Master Songdam said in his Dharma speech, because I think that Sun Master Songdam is talking about enlightenment. What I'm talking about is a state that any reasonably trained meditation practitioner can experience, which is just this inner state of stillness and emptiness where you're not being so distracted by your thoughts and emotions. Now, a lot of people in society will think, well, I have a job, I have, a husband or a wife, I have children, I have a home to take care of. I can't just empty my mind and zone out. I think that this kind of concern is understandable, but it is based on a misinterpretation of what I mean by saying emptying your mind. When we empty our mind, it doesn't mean that we become unresponsive and dull and sort of like turned off. What it really means is that we are not distracted by our own thoughts, by our own mental activity. We are present in the moment, simply observing the moment, but not reacting to it. And it is well known within the Sun Buddhist tradition that this is actually, it is considered that the state of an empty mind is actually the true source of all creativity and inspiration. When you enter into this state of total acceptance, of just accepting and not resisting what's in front of us, we begin to respond to it with great creativity and flexibility. We come up with solutions very spontaneously, very naturally. It doesn't even feel like we're working. And what happens is, instead of fighting with reality, we work with reality. Reality presents us with a situation, we respond to it. Reality presents us with another situation, and we respond to it. We don't try to make everything go according to a plan. We trust the innate intelligence of the amazing human brain to be able to deal with whatever is thrown at it. So the empty mind is actually an actualization, the use of our total brain power. So you mustn't think that empty-mindedness means something like unintelligence. So this is something that I really want to encourage you to try to learn. It really demands a lifestyle change, a different way of approaching our problems. There comes a time when you have to stop planning, stop worrying, and simply enter into meditation and observe what happens in front of us, do what we have to do, and then the time will come when we have to make another decision. So why don't we once again enter into meditation, and let's continue to listen to the Dharma speech of Sun Master Songdam as he teaches us how to attain inner peace.
많이 도취이다. 많이 의다이다. 천 가지 만 가지 의심이 무엇을 보거나 듣거나 경을 보거나 법문을 듣거나 일체 일상생활에서 어떤 종류의 의심이 난다 하더라도 그 의심을 우리가 사량분별로 따져서 해결을 질라 하지 말고 일체 크고 작은 모든 의심을 전부 다 똘똘 뭉쳐서 자기의 본참 화두, 본참 공안으로 나가야 한다. 우리 의뢰인 자가 아니다. 의심에 가고 의심에. 그래서 행주 좌와 우경중간에 산을 보나 물을 보나 하늘을 보나 땅을 보나 항상 자기 본참 공안이 통로하고 그렇게 잡지를 해가야 할 것이다. 수시 나령 타본수가야 모름지기 용을 때려잡고 공망을 때려잡는 그런 용기와 수단을 가져야 그런 수단으로 일권권도 철성관이다. 한 주먹으로 철성관을 쳐서 거꾸로 쳐야 할 것이다. 이 철성관은 무량겁내로 오늘날까지 오면서 우리가 철벽, 은산 철벽으로 이루어진 그 속에 갇혀서 해탈을 못하고 있으니 생사의 해탈을 하려면 대의단을 타파해서 자기의 본성을 보는 것이 이것이 철성관을 때려붓고 출신활로를 열고 나가는 것이다. 비교로. 이 공부는 하나도 어려운 것도 아니고 복잡한 것도 아니고 다만 철저하게 이 정법을 믿고 자기의 본참공안 하나만을 위해서 뇌골수로나 앉아서도 이것이고 서서도 이것이고 소임을 보면서도 이것이고 세수하거나 화장실에 가서도 이것이고 일체 흥망성쇠와 희로애락 속에서 이 한 공안을 거각을 해서 그렇다고 해서 이마에다 찡그리고 힘을 푼다든지 억지로 육단심을 내고 어거지로 몰고 나가는 것이 아니에요. 우주 법계의 이 모든 법이 원래로 허공 속에 핀 꽃이다. 인생을 살아가는데 흥망성쇠와 생로병사와 희로애락을 그 속에서 우리는 살고 있는데 그것이 확실히 알고 보면 그게 다 허공 속에 핀 꽃이고 그 자성이 있는 것이 아니고 본성이 있는 것이 아니고 인연 따라서 모였다가 인연 따라서 흩어진 것이니 중생은 그것이 실다운 것인 줄 알고 자성이 있는 줄 알고 그 집착을 해가지고 그 속에서 몸부림치고 헛을 피우려고 발광을 하는데 그것은 허공에 핀 꽃이라고 깨닫지 못한 사람, 이치를 깨닫지 못한 사람은 꼭 그것이 실제로 있는 것처럼 느껴지는 것뿐이에요. 마치 꿈을 꾸고 있는 동안에는 꿈속에서 만난 모든 경계가 실다운 것으로 느껴지나 잠을 깨고 보면 꿈속에서 좋았던 것이나 나빴던 것이나 한 것이 없는 것과 마찬가지죠. 마땅히 그렇게 알고 인생을 살아가면 세상 일에 크게 집착할 것이 없을 것입니다.
So in his Dharma speech, Sun Master Songdam tells us that all of the complex events that make up the universe and make up our lives are like an illusory flower in the sky, are like a dream. Now, when he says this, I don't think he means that therefore they do not exist at all, that they are nothing. What he's saying, I think, is that they have the character of a dream. So what is a dream like? A dream is constantly flowing and changing. And when it changes, when you're asleep dreaming and one dream ends and another one begins, the dream that ends completely disappears without a trace. It's like it never happened. In the same way, we live our lives and all these things happen to us. We're born, we grow older, you know, we go through all these different experiences in life, but when we turn around, all of it is gone without a trace. All we have is a vague memory of things that may have happened. You know, our own, piecemeal memory of all the things that have happened. So in this way, even though things are real, they also feel unreal. And that is this quality of impermanence, this constant flow, this unending flow of change. Now, for people like us, ordinary people like you and me, we experience life as like a line going from yesterday to today to tomorrow, from the past to the future. But the truth is, according to Buddhist teachings, it's an endless repeating cycle of appearance and disappearance, rise and decline, formation and disintegration, birth and death, creation and destruction. And it's just this endless cycle. When you know that life is just this endless cyclical flow of events, of rising and falling, then the thing to do is direct your attention inward, enter into meditation, and just go with the flow. Ultimately, that's what we're being called upon to do. So how do you go with the flow? Our tendency is either to try to reject things that we don't like or grasp after things that we do like. But if you're in a flow, if you're actually literally in water, you can't reject the water and you can't grab it. You have to learn to swim with it. So how do we swim? How do we float on water? We don't do it by becoming tense. We do it by relaxing, opening up our body, trusting that the water will hold us up, trusting that our body will float on the water. And we move through the water carefully interacting with the nature of the water. We don't just try to run on the water, we swim. We make a swim stroke, our body moves forward through the water, and then we make another stroke. We make a plan, we make a decision, we execute it, then we make another plan or another decision and react. Just as a surfer is always reacting to the different currents and formations of the water, this is what we're called upon to do. And in order to do that, we do need to learn the total acceptance, non-resistance, and emptiness that comes from sun meditation. This, I believe, is the only way that we can truly come to terms with the incredibly stimulating nature, the provocative, anxiety-producing nature of life in modern society, this endless onslaught of stimuli, these endless waves of challenges. We can't outthink that. We instead need to relax, learn how to flow, learn how to float, and then in time we will learn to trust that our mind and our body will react to the experiences of life. We don't have to take them so seriously. We can, in fact, ultimately, one day, approach them with the objectivity that it's like a dream, it's just flowing by. Okay? This is not an argument for passivity. Many times one of the mistakes that meditators make is that when you go into meditation, things really do begin to look unreal. Things really do begin to look like an illusion, and then you feel like it's okay to do nothing. That's not what it means to let go or to be non-resisting or to enter into a state of emptiness. Emptiness simply means responding to the moment without any assumptions, without resistance. So it takes some practice, and we do need to learn how to do sun meditation and to change our lifestyle so that it centers around a meditative approach to living. This is the solution that I have found works most effectively. I think it's better than sleeping pills. So even though it is challenging, it requires us to change the way that we live, I believe it is well worth it. We end up growing quite a bit. We end up evolving and developing. So this is something that I would very much like to recommend to you if you suffer from restlessness, an overactive mind, and sleepless nights. This brings us to the end of another episode. Once again, I will thank all of our viewers for watching today's program, and I will conclude with the traditional Buddhist greeting. May we all attain enlightenment. And now, let us enter our closing session of meditation.